is Professor Dari. He is from the University of Wales from the UK. And next to me in my left, Professor different countries. And please give applause to four of them. And yet, of course, I'm Amelia Fauzia from State Islamic University Sharif. These speakers, we have actually with these four speakers, we have quite comprehensive topics in this panel, 20 years. And I think we can call him ulama, ustad, or sheikh, working on Islam in digital age. And then Professor Kamil is a professor of sociology at the University of Newcastle, specializing in the study of youth culture, including in Indonesia. And Professor Amar Riyad is professor in Arabic and Islamic Studies at the University of Lebanon, working among others on network of pan-Islamist movement and transnational Islam in the modern world. And the last but not least, Professor Fatima. Her research area includes interreligious dialogue, Islam, and social media in Indonesia. So four scholars will fit to our panel, questioning about what is Islam in the digital age. Without further ado, I will ask each of them to talk 20 minutes. And I will start with Professor Dari. As mentioned by Peter previously, Professor Bun is one of the scholars who work a lot on digital Islam. In 2000, Gary published a book entitled Virtually Islamic, and in 2003, he published a book on Islam in the digital age. It is a must book to read, I think. And then 2018, last year, published a book entitled AICIS, and mentioned by Professor Peter Mandeville. Recently, he published a book entitled #Islam: How Cyber Islamic Environments Are Transforming Religious Authority. So in his 20 minutes, Gary will explore the contestation on the issues of representation, leadership, and religious authority. I think mentioned also by Professor Peter. And then online environment, because online environment often challenge traditional model of authority. So, drawing from various examples of global and regional context, and questioning of the impact of social media pronouncement, and how organizations respond to contemporary concern in the light of continually shifting religious and social and media context. So, Professor Gary Burns, it's your time.
Thank you.
Please, this is.
Okay.
Please give applause to him.
I need some pictures. Just waiting for the visuals. I can't do anything without any pictures. I have to sing you a song if I've got the microphone on. Let's just wait and see. Otherwise, I have to show you the printout. It's not very effective with a big group. So let's just wait. Inevitably, whenever you do something about computers and you're talking about computers, the computers go wrong. And you sort of end up relying on pieces of paper and showing people screenshots like this on pictures. That's my plan B, so we'll just wait and see if we're going to get some computer action here. Is this a broadband issue, or is this an internet lag? I'm not quite sure. Talk amongst yourselves while we're doing this.
masih bisa ditampilkan? Yeah, we are in the digital age. It's coming. Yay! Finally.
There we go.
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Start now.
I'm starting now.
Okay, take 2. Here we go. Yes, my discussion today, I don't know if it's exactly as advertised, but I'm going to be looking at various aspects of influences and authority within cyber Islamic environments. So inside the fatwa machine is my working title. I'll be looking at some global influences, some diversity, and I'm also talking a little bit about my take on some of the action within Islam and the internet in Indonesia as well. I've been taking a look there to see if any of the theories apply there. So some of it is based on to keep the publishers happy. This is the most recent book. It's called #Islam. So the discussion is based around that, and also these are my other books from the past. If you're interested in any of the research issues, my website is virtuallyislamic.com, and so you can find out more about the work that I do, and there's some bits and pieces on that website relating to this presentation as well. So I use the term cyber Islamic environments, and the way in which I've approached the subject area is I tend to use snapshots of websites and social media and other online materials, because the amount of material that one has to work with has increased exponentially over the last 20 years. Used to be 20 years ago, you'd have a pretty good take on most of what was out there in terms of cyberspace in Islam. Now the curve's gone vertical. It's important. Instigators present as a Muslim identity attached to it falls into the cyber Islamic environments category. So you get many different diverse interfaces operating within this, and also technological shifts. I think it's important to note that this is not a static field, but this is a field that's evolving over time, so the technology is shifting frequently as well. And of course, it's looking at interactions across a multiplicity of platforms as well. So it keeps you busy, this sort of area of research, because you know that if you leave it for a few days, it's going to be completely different. So you have to be on board with it pretty much 24/7. This is not a very useful diagram for you to look at here. It's simply to say that if you want to look at the diagram of cyber Islamic environments, you'll find a copy of this on my website, virtuallyislamic.com, so you can go on there and download the diagram. I'm not going to give you an eye test here and read all the little categories, but it's just an opportunity for you to take a look if you wish. So I'm really interested in the way in which materials now can be accessed across a whole range of devices, which is what Peter was talking about earlier on. The idea that people can carry their version of Islam within their pocket on their mobile device, and they can curate it, I think, is a really important point. A lot of the materials I'm looking at here are kind of Sunni Orthodox in orientation, but I look across the board at many different expressions of Islamic diversity that appear online. I've also used the term information souk. I brought that in '99 because that's this idea of shopping around for religious opinions. People going to different marketplaces and trying to find the opinion that really suits their circumstance. In fact, that was a phenomena that predated the internet, because I remember talking to scholars about that doing my PhD research, but it certainly has more relevance now. Of course, within the information marketplace, there are a lot of sharks as well as sheikhs that operate and provide their ideas and opinions and might not have their kind of full legitimacy as would be recognised by many traditional scholars. So this information marketplace has got its own dynamics, and it reflects ideas associated with the long tail of demand, which is a term that came up with Chris Anderson from Wired magazine. This idea that any kind of market can be satisfied by looking through the internet. You know, you can find anything by searching. You can find any interest, your own micro-specialism interest. You're going to find somebody else out there who will kind of recognise that interest and you'll be able to talk to them. So the long tail is really important in terms of information. I think that millennials and Gen Z and digital natives are responding more to aspects of online authority than the analogue equivalents. It's interesting to see there is a real generational shift that's taking place. It's not about people having to learn about how to use computers. It's now something that is entirely natural for people to go and look online for their religious information. So religious expression presents itself across a variety of digital platforms. It's consumed 24/7. And online environments, as Peter mentioned, challenge these traditional models of religious authority. And I think the influence and impact of digitally literate scholars and authorities goes beyond the traditional boundaries of imams, mullahs and sheikhs. And there are new roles for Islamic influencers as well. So the algorithms of Sheikh Google operate amongst this information overload of fatwas and religious opinions. That technology is moving faster. Technology moves much faster than society. And that means that it requires a constant catch-up in order that people can really sort of keep on top of things. So software and hardware don't really have society protocols associated with them. And this means that it can often be a process of trial and error in terms of mediating the media that we have out there. Many early adopters of technology have benefited in terms of cyber-Islamic environments, but there have been some spectacular fails as well, including among some of the major institutions. I mean, it took a long time for Al-Azhar to actually get on board, and I'm not sure they entirely got on board already. It was a case of, what is this thing called the internet? When it first came out, people really didn't know what they were doing. They thought it was just a fad or a phase and it would go away, but obviously it hasn't. But there was a number of real failures there. So there can be this relationship between the presentation of Islam online and its analogue equivalent, but we also see some unique ideas about Islam that have emerged online. I think what we're getting is a real digital cacophony that requires gatekeepers, it requires guidance, it requires some kind of mediation in order that people can negotiate this information overload that's out there. So traditional sources and spheres have developed and maintained their own digital interfaces, and we've got a contestation between this range of digital ideas about religion. And there's multiple approaches towards audiences. So audiences are very nuanced as well. There's no homogeneous Islam online, but there is this incredible diversity that's out there. And it's very difficult for some organisations and platforms to actually compete with the fluid social media from diverse sources that are out there. And it's intensified this relationship between individuals and devices, especially with the digital natives that are out there. But let's not forget that there's still a digital divide. There are still a lot of people who aren't online. And there are still a lot of people with very poor internet connections. They don't always get on board. Where I live in Wales, we have a very poor internet connection. It can take ages for pictures to come down the line sometimes. So that's a point too. We can't assume that everybody is going to be on board, but I think the influence is increasing. We're seeing that in Indonesia, we're seeing it in many different places. We're seeing higher connectivity, improved broadband, and of course that's having an impact on how people mediate cyber-Islamic environments. People are more able to get on board. So online identities are incredibly diverse, but I think the audiences also have to be looked at closely. We have the enthusiasts, we have the supporters, but also there are the casual readers as well. The people who go online, they might look at some sport, they might look at some music, they might go shopping, and right, let's just have a look at a little bit of religion as well. It's not an assumption that everybody's looking at the religious content 24/7. It's part of a daily consumption that they have. And so there's a nuanced audience that we have to consider, and different types of readers as well, looking at religion from different areas. So we have a core audience, got religious interests, but also all of the other interests that kind of fall within that model as well. So think about the audience if you're researching this particular area, and think about what it really means to have an Islamic environment online, because it can mean a lot of different things to different people. And over the years we've seen different ideas about design, about the use of Quran, the use of Islamic language, and what makes a website Islamic is also something that's an interesting question. Sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes it's very overt. So we have to think about those sorts of different influences. And this means, too, that looking at the shifts in technology, I'm going to have a nostalgia trip for some people. And some people say, well, what on earth was this? Old types of technology, what we call digital archaeology. Let's just go back one here if I can. So who remembers all of these bits of equipment? Some people might still have them in their offices or in a museum. I think I took one or two of these pictures in museums because the technology is so old. This is the time where it did take a week for a photograph to come down the line. You wouldn't find video circulating 24/7. You had to dial in on a modem. Some people must remember dial-up modems and all those old technologies. That kids today don't realise how difficult it was to get online. So we have to think about the shifts in the way in which Islam has been mediated from chat rooms and FTP and text only through to new forms of technology. So the use of video clips, the introduction of the browser, which was a big deal. People forget there was a pre-browser era too. And then, who remembers those big phones? Anybody got one of those big phones still? So the technology has shifted, that's the point I'm making. And within all of those shifts, we're seeing different forms of technology coming through as well. So different ways in which Islamic products have appeared online. So the way in which we've seen the Quran, but also we've seen things like a so-called Islamic smartphone, and we've seen the introduction of apps. Lots of different ways in which products have come through. They've become more nuanced and multilingual and interactive. Lots of different audiences being catered for within this kind of framework. And now in the era of the influencers, so people talking about lifestyle and identity and working with digital natives 24/7. So within the global influences of this so-called fatwa machine, we've got this generation of web-friendly imams and scholars utilizing social media in numerous languages, attaining high profiles and levels of influence, even if they're not traditionally trained. I mean, when this phenomenon started, it started with things like Islamicity, and then we had the influence of Yusuf al-Qaradawi with Islam Online. Some people might remember that particular website that is no more, but was very influential at the time, because it brought in products like the Cyber Counselor, where people could type in questions or send in questions, often on very sensitive subjects, and they would get a response from a scholar. This was changing the dynamic because it meant that you didn't have to go to a local imam to get an opinion. You could go online, you could be anonymous, and you could go and find out the information, maybe ask 2 or 3 different people. Incredibly sensitive questions that would be presented on these cyber counsellor websites. That evolved into About Islam, which became slightly slicker, so you see the technology getting slicker over time. Long-term sites like Islam QA have evolved. If I had more time, I'd show you more pictures from Islam QA, from Al-Munajjid, and the way in which he's presented his ideas about Islam, not always universally appreciated, but in a very important way, he's boosted his profile through using the internet. And then very specific, nuanced products like Farhad Hashmi, who presents lessons online from Canada to an international audience. She's able to do that. She builds up a very big audience. She talks about a variety of issues through her lessons that are presented and broadcast. We've got this interesting juxtaposition of the MacBook, the dress code, all coming together in this one product. And then different ideas about diversity of Islamic experience and opinion. So eSheikh.com, which is from a Naqshbandi Sufi perspective, Naqshbandi order, have been very dynamic online. I write about them extensively using social media as a way to present their ideas. But I really wanted to talk a little bit about Indonesia as I was here, and I wanted to look a little bit more at how the internet is working in relation